Hello, James. This is Sarah.
Hi. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Hi.
We'll start at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time.
Okay. All right, that works. So will you allow me to share my screen?
Yeah. Well, I think you can share. Oh,
Yeah, I was looking for how to share. I didn't see it.
okay. Um,
Okay, there we go.
can you see it now?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I
Okay.
just shared my screen.
Yeah, I
Can
can.
you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
You
I can see your screen.
you probably see PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, then we're good.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Saturday Night SQL Virtual Chapter webinar. Um, If you have any questions, please type your question in the chat window. And if you would like to ask your question by yourself, please raise your hand. I will unmute you so you can ask James your question directly. Okay, James,
Yeah,
can you start now?
sure can. Well, hello, everyone. This session is on SSRS Metadata. My name is Jim Miller. I'm the Senior Consultant at BITrax Consulting. Hopefully you can all see my screen. My blog is there, and in fact, the first exercise that I'm going to run through, I actually have on my blog, so if you want to recreate this on your own, there are step-by-step instructions for building this solution in Power Query inside of Excel. Okay, just a little bit about who we are. We do the Microsoft BI stack, so SSRS, ASIS. We do consulting. We create solutions, and we also do training. And our website is www.bitrax.com. Find out more there. All right, well, we'll jump right into it. This is the first thing that we will run through, and that is using Power BI inside of Excel, although you could also use Power BI Desktop, to extract information from reporting services, and technically we're pulling it straight from the ReportServer database using Power Query. And then while you're in Excel, there is also Power Pivot, so no real need to move it anyplace else if you want to do some analysis on that information. So this is one scenario that you can use. There's a second scenario, which is doing the very same thing, only with SSIS, to pull the metadata out of SSRS, and then in this case we're populating a separate database with all the metadata that is being extracted from SSRS. So these are two options. We'll run through both of these during this session. All right, so if you're wondering why use metadata management, by automating this, you'll have some insight into your SSRS solution and the more reports that you have, the more valuable it is to be able to manage all this metadata. For example, oftentimes people wonder where a certain table or column is referenced within SSRS. Well, if you had hundreds of reports, you might imagine that that's a difficult question to answer. But if you have a schema change, it affects a certain table or X number of columns, then people will wonder, well, if we change that, what will it break? Maybe what reports are using it? And so metadata is one way to answer that particular question. Another one are what parameters are being used. Short of opening up all of your reports, which could be in the hundreds, and looking at what parameters are available, this can also be extracted using metadata. Another common question is, what are my data sources? And it's not uncommon in SSRS for people to have redundant data sources as a deployment issue where people are able to create multiple data sources on their own and not necessarily use the shared data sources that are already in the environment. So these are three common questions, and each one of these can be resolved by using a metadata solution with SSRS. All right, if you look at any report, what you typically see is all the HTML rendering, but of course behind the scenes there is a file. It has the extension RDL. It is an XML compliant file, and it stores all this metadata. So in order to extract the metadata, we essentially go through and parse the RDL as it is deployed to the reporting services database. So not as it is in Visual Studio, but actually when you deploy a report to ReportServer, it ends up in the ReportServer database. And that's where we actually pull this metadata from. So these are deployed reports that we're focusing on for metadata. Okay, so we're going to start out with a demo of how you pull out this metadata using Power Query. We'll also do the same thing with SSIS, and then we'll show you how you report off of this or use it for analysis, and then how would you use it in a third-party application, which is one that I'll show at the end. It's called FDR, which stands for FastTrack Reports, which is just a separate SSRS front end that works in conjunction with Report Manager, but provides more of a portal experience for your reports. Okay, well, let's go ahead and see how this works. I'm going to go ahead and open up Excel. And we'll just start with a blank worksheet. To get started, we need data. The data is from our reporting services environment, which is from a database. But we're actually going to use Power Query to drive these, because it actually has a very good way to parse the XML, or the RDL, if you will, which is how Report Manager stores this data. So the real key to it is being able to access the XML. So we'll go ahead and get this data from a database. This is a SQL Server database, of course. I'll give it the name of the server, the database where it's stored, and I'll go ahead and skip the SQL statement, and that way it'll present me a list of the catalogs. Okay, so here's a standard report server container with views and tables. And what you'll probably notice is most everything is stored in this catalog table. By clicking on catalog, it will give me a preview of the items or columns that are in this particular table. And as I scroll from left to right, you can see the type of information that's pretty easy to get to. Now, of course, you could do the same thing with the SQL query at this stage. But what you'll find is the majority of the information that you're interested in is actually in a column that is a binary column. You'll see this, this content column. So if you're using SQL without any specific XML parsing, this is pretty much as far as you can go. But because we're using Power Query and the fact that it has very helpful XML discovery tools, we'll be able to drill into this content. I could return it as is, but I would like to do more to this particular query. So I'm going to choose Edit, meaning I'm going to start with the catalog table, but then drill further into this table in subsequent steps in Power Query. Okay, so now we're actually in the Query Editor window. You can see that it's applied 2 steps for us. The way Power Query works, it's not a lot different than writing or developing using a macro language. It essentially follows your steps and records them. You can see the detail or the actual code that is written if you go to the advanced editor, and you can see that it has written this code for us. Essentially what it's saying is I've gone to the local database on this particular server, and I've gone into the ReportServer database. That was our first step. And then it says, based on the table catalog in the schema DBO, we will pull that data. That is all the columns. And so the 2 steps that we've done so far have been recorded in M, and it allows us to, you can actually edit here if you like, or as you continue to work in the designer, it'll add additional steps. So the first thing you'll probably notice is there a different type of data here. 2 actually stands for a report. One is, I think, a folder. But what we're going to do is focus just on reports at this stage. I've got a breakdown of the exact types listed in another database that I'll show you in a bit. So in order to just get the type 2s, I'm going to add a filter, and I'm only going to return the rows that have a type value of 2. And so these are all the reports. This is generally the AdventureWorks database reports that are in CodePlex, if you want to know where these came from. And then we did a few specific additional ones. The item ID is the unique GUID for the report. Here's the path, the name of the report. You got a parent ID. Here's all the content. We'll look at that in a minute. But you can see there's some other bits of information as well. If you have a description for your report, it shows up here. If it's hidden in Report Manager, then that would show true. Created by, we'll come up with the actual name of the person. We'll show that later. That's a GUID that identifies a Windows user. The date the report was created, last modified, who modified it, etc. So you can see there's quite a bit of information here. All right. Well, this Power Query only sees the content as a blob at this point. Doesn't really even know it's XML. We happen to know that. So because of that, we can apply a transformation. So we can transform this particular column into XML. So after we do that, you'll notice that this changes to a tables. So what we have done is we've said that binary string is XML. We want to transform it to XML and then be able to use it. Well, what it needs to do then is examine the XML, perhaps use the XSD, which is the schema for it, if that's possible. But convert it into a specific schema for XML. Now, we'll apply that same schema to every one of these binary objects and then expose them as a table that we can drill into. In order to drill into it, you'll see this double arrow. If you click on that, it will show you all of the columns that are underneath at the first level for this particular XML file. That also means, since this is the first level, that chances are we'll be looking at additional levels because of the hierarchical nature of XML. But instead of having to apply the XML logic in a query, Power Query gives you the ability to essentially browse through that data. Now I'm going to unclick this checkbox because if I don't, it'll give me a dot, content dot, auto refresh, content dot, and it gets a little verbose for the column names. So I'm just going to go ahead and click that off, so I'll get these names returned. So I'll go ahead and click OK. All right. Well, you can see we have an additional column we could drill into, which would give us information about the body. There's a description here as well. The reason it gave us description.1 is there's already a description in here, which is right there. And you can see there's quite a bit more information. We won't spend the time to drill through all of this. But let's say that I wanted to return just a handful of these columns. Well, what I can do is select the column header, hold the Control key down, and select additional column headers for the columns that I'm interested in. I'll grab the data sets and data sources. Get the page. Grab the parameters, the width. hidden, created, a modified. That's good enough. After selecting those, you can right-click and say remove all the other columns that you did not click on. So it's just kind of a shortcut or a different way to remove it. You could click on all the columns you wanted to remove and then choose this option. Depends what is the most numerous. All right. Now, one thing I wanted to point out at this stage, if you notice for body, there is this sales by region report that says it has no body, says it has no page, has no width. So that doesn't really sound right. And the reason for that is there are different schemas available in SSRS because it looked at the very first content column, and that happened to be the 2008 schema. It applied that to all of these rows. Now, I'll show you a way to get around that, but for now, the reason that these are null is these are the 2010 schema. The 2010 schema is different, and so when it applied the schema for 2008 across all of these rows, it found a lot of this stuff missing. So that's what's happening behind the scenes here, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. All right, so at this stage, you can either click Close and Load, and that will load this information directly to an Excel spreadsheet, or you can say Close and Load to and make it a connection only. And the reason you would do that is if you wanted to do additional queries, and instead of starting from the very beginning where we started to reuse this logic, then you can create a connection and then base your next query off of that connection. So let me go ahead and choose Load, and you'll see that it has now created this particular query, and here's a preview of it, as a connection only. And the reason you would do this, of course, is to come up with another query and base it on this particular one. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll click on Catalog, and then I'm going to reference this. Now you can see that I've set the second query equal to the first query, Catalog. And let's say what I really want this to be are just reports. So I'll give this query the name Reports. And then I'll go ahead and exclude these that we haven't drilled into yet. So go ahead and remove these columns. Let me drill into page. Okay, so page, we can see we've got the margins, top, bottom, etc. I'm going to unclick this so they're not quite as verbose, and then choose OK. All right, and so now we can get information on the margins, right, left, bottom, top, etc. All right, I'll remove this column. And I think, yeah, we can leave the rest. So this time I'll close and load this to a worksheet. I'll rename this worksheet Reports. And this shows you how you can fairly quickly go in and query the ReportServer catalog and pull information out that's generally only available when you use XML querying in SQL Server. All right. If you wanted to get reports that were specific to an iteration, then you would need actually a version of this that's more complicated. I'll show you fairly quickly what that looks like. Let's see that again. Open that up. Query. There we go. All right. So here is one where we start out with a set of parameters which essentially says this is where my metadata configuration is. This is actually pulling from two different environments, from a local host and then another server. And this is the report. So it's actually pulling from two different servers. But just to give you a rough idea, and of course I won't go through all of these, but this is the query, or the queries, I should say, that we needed to put together in Power Query in order to get all the specifics, including the 2008 version and the 2010 version. So it's a lot more involved when you get into some of these details. So I don't want to really overwhelm you at this point, but this is really where you get started by some simple queries against the catalog table to pull out this metadata. All right. Well, let's take a quick look at the database where this is stored. I have a database called SSRS Metadata. And then this metadata, this is the actual table that is populated through the process that we just saw. And so you can see now conveniently inside of SQL Server, I've got the unique item number, the report, the path, the name, and then who created it, who changed it, the dates. Do you print headers on the first page, last page, the header height, etc. And all the margins, right, left, etc. In order to do this, there's a version in SSIS to extract all the metadata. Now, I don't have all this in Power Query. Right now, I just have this first step, which is the reports in Power Query. What this particular SSIS package will do is first truncate all the metadata tables, get a list of all the servers that are SSRS environments, go through each environment and pull the reports, the shared data sources, the report shared data sets, shared data sets, shared data set parameters, etc., etc. Actually right down to the fields. And then these data flows will store all of the metadata into a SQL Server table, and you can see this is going into the reports table. By the way, just give you a rough idea of what's involved with this. Here's all the reports, and this will join to the user table. So we've been pulling from the catalog, but in order to get the actual user name, you can just use SQL to connect to the users in that same database, which is ReportServer. So we've been hitting the catalog table But there's also a users table, which will give you the actual username over here. These are XML queries to get the header for 2010, get the header for 2008. Same thing for the footer, 2010. And the reason for this is Microsoft has changed the schema, and I'm sure they'll change it again, but these are the two most common versions. And then the page information, 2008, 2010. Then all we do is sort and join, and then it gets us down to the actual write out to the table. For data sources, this one's a lot easier. It actually uses a common schema, and it will pull out the data source, the connection string, the provider, etc. This, by the way, is a standard SQL query for XML. For report shared data sets, again, pretty straightforward. There's a query. Shared data sets. Parameters, these are pretty handy. So you know who is using which parameters. Anyway, we'll do the same thing for data sources, parameters, report fields. This last step, if your reports, your SSRS reports, are deployed to SharePoint, it actually adds a GUID in places where you don't want it. So this just cleans that up, and you just enable that if you're extracting it from SharePoint. All right, so if you were to run this, it's going to truncate all the tables, get a list of all the connection strings. There's just one. You could have several environments if you want. And it just runs through and it pulls all this metadata out. And then it populates it into these tables, these metadata tables. We'll have this package for download. I'll talk about that in just a little bit. The short answer is yes, but there are some hoops for that. Keep on that question. Okay. All right. There are views you can use in order to query these tables. So report and FDR. Okay. So I don't think I'm using those anymore. I think I've replaced those all with stored procedures. All right. What I'm going to do is show you an SSRS report, and the SSRS report will use these particular queries that will simply join these tables together. So let me go ahead and go into Report Manager, and in Report Manager I have Metadata Reports, and then here's the report metadata. So really what you need is not only the SSIS package to extract this, but you need the stored procedures that this particular report uses, as well as this RDL, in order to put the whole solution together. Okay. So here you can see the reports In the EventWorks folder, these are all the reports, who created it, when, last changed, modified, header information, footer information, etc. There we go. Okay, top margin, bottom margin, etc. This is handy to see if you have standardized well with headers and footers and margins, etc. Also gives you just another interesting view of where your reports are in which folder instead of in Report Manager jumping back and forth. For parameters, this will show you the report, what parameters it uses, the prompt that the user sees, and then all the different options for those parameters. So nullable blanks, multi-value, use in query, prompt user, etc. I find this is handy if somebody asks for a new report and they want to use the similar parameters, if not identical parameters, then I will often go and find a report through this means and then say, well, this has all the parameters that I wanted, and all that logic will be in the RDL, and that usually is my starting point for a new report. The data sources, again, what you want to do is share your data sources, not have the very same data sources deployed under different names. So this will give you an idea if your data sources are proliferating, and then which report is using which data source. This is a cube data source, multidimensional. The report they're actually using right now is SSRS Metadata, and you can see it's coming from that database, SSRS Metadata. For the data sets, this is of interest because it's gone through all the reports and it's pulled out all of the SQL that is used. So if somebody were to ask the question, where is a certain table being used or column that's being used, you should be able to programmatically query this in the database. So here's your data sets. It's here. Yeah. So there's your command text. So you could query using the like clause, looking for table names, and it would go through all of the command text that you have for your data sets. And then finally down to the field level. So you can see which report is using which data fields, what's the data type, etc. Okay, so this is one way to use the metadata. Another way to do it is to leverage an application that actually uses this. We have a product, and here's our website, bitracks.com. It's called FastTrack Reports, or FDR. So if you go to our site, you have several options. You can actually use it in the cloud, and that's this first option.
Is it essential?
So if you click here, it'll actually take you over to our site. You click on this link, and you have to put in this username and password, FDR all lowercase. And you can actually use the product online to see if you like it.
What is FastTrack Reports?
Sorry. You can also download it and use it for free in your environment for 30 days. Which, getting back to the question, can you get this product, the SSIS package, the report, the database? The answer to that is yes. All you have to do is download our product and use it. Just tell us if you like it, tell us what you think, and we'll give you that product for free. You can email me and just say, hey Jim, I attended your webinar, we downloaded FastTrack Reports, here's what we think about it, and I'll send you that solution for no charge. And the cost, it's like $2 per month. If you choose to buy FTR, you haven't even seen it yet, but this is the price. It's roughly $2 per user per month. All right, so here's FTR. Now what FTR will do is it's going to use that same metadata as well as make all the calls to Report Manager in the identical fashion that Report Manager does. So from a Report Manager, from the home, I can see these are my folders. Using FTR, the folders are listed over here. To see the contents, all you have to do is click on the folder name, and it'll show you the contents of the folders. It also has a favorites, which is kind of a nice way to easily record what reports are your most favorite. So let's say it's, well, I don't know, how about territory sales drill down. With one click, it actually puts it into your favorites folder. It's supposed to. Not sure what I did wrong. Try that again. Company sales, let me take that out. Okay. Company sales, I can put it into favorites. Okay, there it is. I'm not quite sure what's wrong with this other report. But it wouldn't go into favorites. Also, you can get what's called a thumbnail of a particular report. So if I click on this question mark, it'll give me the same metadata that we have been looking at. And so this is querying the metadata. So if somebody says, well, I don't know if I want to run it, or I'm not quite sure what that report looks like, it gives you a thumbnail of what the report looks like. It gives you details of when it changed last and who created it, as well as the parameters that it uses, whether they're multi-value. Also, it puts any ancillary files off to the right. Well, unlike Report Manager, where it puts ancillary files together with the actual report. So we use that to separate it. We also track how the report was run previously. So for example, you can rerun a report using the parameters that were provided from a prior session. So this is metadata that actually comes out of in ReportServer, the view, which is your execution logs. So that information actually comes out of what this particular user, how they ran it before. Notice you can go directly to a PDF or directly to Excel by leveraging these same parameters. Now, that's something you can't do in Report Manager. You have to first render it to HTML and then render it to a PDF or Excel. But here with one click, it'll reuse those parameters and rerun the report. If you have a lot of parameters, then this will save you quite a bit of time. We have some people who have 20, 30 parameters. So you can imagine what a time savings that is. If you had any historical snapshots, they would also be listed here as well. So if you maybe run a snapshot of a report once a month, those would all be listed under the down arrow as well. All right. You can have this broken out by different groups. So let's say that you're part of operations or finance. So messaging can be done directly for different groups. So if you were an administrator, you could send a message to everybody in operations or marketing, and it would show up here in the portal. Or you could also send it to all users. So if your data refresh was behind, you could have a message here that says, you know, the data refresh is 30 minutes behind. You know, please, you know, check back later. So just a handy way to get messages out to all people who are using your reports. All right. Well, I think that's just about it. Any questions at this stage?
Hey, Jim, somebody asked if you have this SSIS package available for download. I think you already answered it, right? Somebody has to go to your website to order, to click that link.
Yeah, just get the 30-day trial, and if you go ahead and download it and try it out, let us know what you think. Then you'll get it for free. Just send me an email. J Miller BI Tracks. I have that actually on my website, or sorry, on a slide. Let me start this up again. Let's go in. Okay. Yeah, if you first of all, if you want the Power Query walkthrough, you can go to bitracks.wordpress.com. It's also BI for Breakfast. If that, you could probably search that. But that will give you a blog entry to walk through step by step. To download FDR, you can go to bitracks.com. And then if you need to get a hold of me for any reason, I'm jmiller@bitracks.com. So yeah, if you want the full solution for SSRS, all you have to do is try our product, and I'll send it out to you. So it's a free 30-day trial, and you just download it. In order to install it, you just need an IIS server, because FastTrack Reports works off of IIS, but it makes all the very same web service calls that Report Manager does. So they all stay in sync. And so, for example, if you change the name of this report, product catalog 1, whatever. If you refresh, oh, I know why. I'm on FastTrack Reports. I'm not actually on my local. That's why. Okay, hang on a second. Let me close that. New window. FDR. Let's see. Local host should have FDR here somewhere. Oh, C1. There we go. Localhost FDR. Okay, so yeah, product catalog 1. All right, should be able to add that. Sales drill down, favorites. Yeah, there it is. Territory sales drill down. Okay. So if I change that back, this product catalog, apply, FTR, AdventureWorks, there it's renamed. So what they do, they make the identical web service calls. So any change made to one is automatically reflected in the other. The only caveat is FastTrack Report uses IIS. So you actually install the application into IIS, and then it calls your ReportServer database, all web service calls and all the metadata management is done that way. It gives you a nice previews too for all your reports. It will actually give you 2 levels here of folders, assuming they're nested. Okay, I'm actually admin on this one, so you have another option for messages. So if you want to get a message out to everybody, go back to reports, and so now you can see the admin sent a message. So it's just kind of a nice way to get word out to everybody who uses. But if you want the messages targeted to a specific organization, you can say, well, I just want to send it to marketing or wherever. So this is kind of a nice portal feature.
So if you are sharing the say like SSRS server with the other teams, and if you use this method, can you see other teams report metadata?
Well, you would do that by environment. So if in fact you had multiple environments defined, so here's your report source list. I just have one, but if you were to add another one, so let me edit that. Let's see, I've got, let's see, I had a production environment. That's called the server. Okay. So in this case, I could see both of these. If I look at the metadata right now, look at these reports, I've got 14. They're all in development. But if I rerun this package, now that I've defined a second environment, so it'll run through the first environment, and I will run back through for the second environment. And so now if I look at the reports, look at the right place. I should have put that source list. Product. Oh, no? Oh, I'm quite sure it's wrong. It should have included here. There's metadata. But yeah, if the way it should work, if you had both of these in a single repository, then yes, you would see both. Oh, I know why. I pointed to an environment that had no reports. Let me change that. For metadata, for source list. That's actually, okay, that's another environment that actually has reports in it. Okay, so let me rerun this. There's the first environment, there's the next one. Okay, so now if I look at the reports, I've got two different environments in here, but that's simply because I'm using the same metadata repository for both of the SSRS environments. Now you can have separate repositories, one for prod, one for dev. This is kind of interesting because if you wanted these reports to be the same, then you could run some automated comparisons between the two in terms of the data sets, the parameters, etc. And so if it is in the same repository, it does give you some more options as far as comparing between dev, test, prod, etc.
Well, I ran into this situation where two users, when they click on the same report link, and one sees the changes I just made, the other one couldn't. Will this tool capture, like if why this user didn't see the changes and that kind of like a
Well, yeah, I wonder if it could
report?
be environment related, potentially. If you were using FTR, you could always go to the help, and from the help, you could ask when was it last changed and by whom, and that might give you an indication that they're actually looking in a different environment than what you had just updated. If for some reason this shows when it was truly modified, the most recent date, and they're also getting old data, then there probably would be some other, something else going on, but it might give you at least one way to help troubleshoot that particular issue.
So will you be able to see through this metadata, like when the report couldn't render? There's an issue like
when it could not render. Yeah, actually I think that is already provided for you in the ReportServer database. There are views, these execution logs, and they'll actually give you a status, whether it was successful or not. These were all successful. We do provide also that report under metadata for usage summary. And this, you also get this for free along with FTR. And this will show you which report the name, how many times it was run, average duration, the size of it, the average number of rows. And you can drill in, you say, well, that's a popular report right there, ran 48 times. This one ran 7 times. If you want to see the detail behind those 7, you can see how it's what's run differently. But this report actually comes out of the execution log.
So
and this is where you go to check this last column in the event that it was not a successful rendering.
So if somebody doesn't have access to the report server, couldn't see the execution log, will he or she still run the SSIS package?
Well, actually, all you need to do for this particular report is have a data source that the user, the actual data source for that report. So let's see, where is that? The data source is metadata. Okay, it's coming out of the same database. So what you would do for the data source is provide custom credentials. Here it's just me, but if you were to store the credentials on the report server, enter your username, password, and say as Windows, then somebody could run this report using the credentials of this user where you stored their access. And sometimes people come up with an SSRS only user, right? In order to put that in here, and so it's a Windows service account where the password would not expire. But that way, you would be able to grant people access to reports that hit a data source that they wouldn't normally have access to. Like this one, which goes right off of the report server. Okay. Well,
I know it's a little bit over 8. May I ask one more quick question?
Oh, sure, no problem.
Well, earlier you showed the type 2 equals report. Can you tell us what other numbers mean?
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I forgot. And let's see, catalog types. So I have this in my SSRS Metadata database. And so here they are. So 2 is report, 1's a folder, resource, linked reports, data source, report model. That's not used currently. Datasets, report parts. So those are the 9 options you could have for the catalog type inside of the report server database catalog table, which is right there. Yeah, good question.
So if somebody doesn't have access to the report server, they could only schedule the SSIS package on the server to run the package, right? They can't run it locally.
Well, yeah, if they had SSIS, they could run this, and the data source. There are 2 data sources. One is where's your repository, and so you'd want to configure that to any SQL server. That wouldn't have to be a production server. It could be a development server. And then the dynamic connection is set through what you saw earlier in the metadata, where we have the report source list. So any database can have this. and you tell it to look at these servers. So it's going to go to that server, this database name. It could be different, of course, if it's an instance. So you put in your own name, and then it'll populate this particular metadata database. Again, this could be anywhere. It could be on your, it could be SQL Express on your desktop. And so now if you wanted it scheduled, that gets a little trickier because you're working with SSIS. So depending on your deployment model, this is the package deployment. So you could have execute DTS package or executable run, pick up this particular package, SSRS Metadata, and schedule that using like Windows Scheduler on your desktop. If it was project deployment, and it's not, you could change it, of course, you could convert it to project. If it's project deployment, then you have to deploy it to an SSIS server and schedule it that way. So that would be a little bit trickier if you wanted to schedule that just on your own without access to an SSIS server somewhere.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any questions from the audience?
Hey, James. Okay, that's the last question probably.
Go ahead.
Hey, James, I have a question. Like, you have all of this metadata. Because very often we are required to get the the tables for all of the reports that runs against. So, is there any quick way to find out the tables? Because a lot of reports are developed by others, so we need to sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As a matter of fact, that would be, let's see, source fields, parameter report, shared data sets. Okay, that's data set reference now. Shared data set. Okay. Yeah, see the command text. So you would be able to parse this particular column to find the actual command text that's used, in this case for this this data set. So employee sales detail is using this particular query. And yeah, and it's a very, very common problem. So if you were to say, select where command text is like your, and then the table name that you're looking for, then it would tell you which reports, in this case, which data sets are using that. And then you want to say, well, what reports are in which data set? And so here's a data set name, and there's a report name. So that's one way to determine where the report is actually being used by querying the data set along with the report shared data set to get the report name. But yeah, that actually is one of the most common use cases for the metadata, is to answer that question, especially if you have hundreds of reports. The only other real option is to open up all 100 reports and look at them. But obviously, each report can have many data sets, so that can take quite a bit of time to run through that exercise.
So we still have to read the command, right? The query. That is a query, right? Like say, for example, we got the command, the metadata here. We'll still have to read the command.
Yeah. Right. So there's two things you might find here. You might find a query, or you could find the name of a stored procedure.
Okay.
Now, if it's the name of a stored procedure, then you have other options. You can use SQL servers. What was that command? It's to show the dependencies of it. SP depends. And you can then query a table name and find the name of that particular stored procedure that uses the table that's also used here. Let's see, do I have? Yeah, so the data set name. Okay, these parameters are using data sets. But yeah, so there's two places to look. If you're using stored procedures, you would use SP depends, look for that table, and also where that stored procedure is used in the metadata. Or if it's an embedded SQL statement, then you would search that text column, command text, and use the like clause for that table. So essentially you're looking in two places, either in the metadata for a table name or in SP depends in a stored procedure that's used by a report.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I don't see any hands or any more questions posted. I think we'll stop here. Thank you
All right.
thank you
So
so
you're very
much,
welcome.
James,
You're very welcome.
for presenting. If you guys have questions, you can shoot Jim an email. Yeah,
Yeah,
he
no
has.
problem. No problem. Be
Uh,
happy to help you out.
cool. Thank you so much, James.
Okay. All right. Have a great Saturday evening or Sunday morning, wherever you are.
Yeah. Thank you,
All right.
everybody. This webinar is recorded. We will publish this webinar shortly on the YouTube channel, so you're welcome to watch it again later. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Goodbye.
All right.